My boss fired me, so I told his wife about his private meetings with his secretary. OKOP. This is OKOP. I'm Samuel Donner.
And I'm John Frye.
And we tell the funniest stories on the internet. What is the closest you've been to being fired?
Oh, there was one job where I was running like basically digital ads, Facebook, Google, etc. And I was very nervous at first because I had no experience. And then I got to a point where I was like, yeah, I'm crushing it. Like I've learned it. I'm doing so well. And then like so nonchalantly, the CTO who had previous to that been doing all of the ads and stuff, he was like, oh yeah, like since John started taking over, we lost $10,000 on this, but blah, blah, blah. And then he kept going nonchalantly. And I was like, oh my God. And so I went to him and I was like, what was that thing about $10,000? And basically like we made money overall.
But there was $10,000 decrease from when they were running it.
There was basically an area of the ads where it's like, this was completely unnecessarily run.
The bejeebus out of
me.
Dude,
And it was right at the point where I finally felt like I'm freaking crushing it. You know what I mean? And then, dude, I crapped my pants so hard. But then he literally was like, it's no big deal. Like he mentioned it so nonchalantly because it was
actually not a big deal.
And again, they made money in the grand scheme of things, but this,
for this one project,
portion of it
right?
Lost 10,000. But I was like,
well, I have a story about someone getting fired, but then taking sweet, sweet revenge.
Ooh, delicious.
My boss fired me, so I told his wife about his private meetings with his secretary. About 10 years ago, when I was 19, I worked for a regional grocery store in the meat packing department.
Packing meats. You know where our minds are at.
Yeah, immediately. Pay was bad, and I had a second shift. I came in at 3 and left at 11. It wasn't a terrible job, all things considered. I had the meat room to myself. The meat room. Beating that meat every day. I had the meat room all to myself so I could listen to music and really just not be annoyed by other employees. My duties when I showed up was to package more ground beef and other beef-based products and put them on the shelf. After 5, I also had to juggle working behind the deli counter.
Ooh.
Well, shortly after getting hired, the boss of the meat department, the meat daddy,
the big meat man, showed back up from vacation. And I was the new guy. Everything was fine in the beginning, but I found when I would clock in, the lady behind the counter, we'll call her V, wouldn't be there. And there would be a line. So I would clock in, spend the first 30 minutes of my shift doing her job. No problem. I actually liked that position. And then, well, after the line was done, I would almost always see Mr. Bossman staring me down, angry I'm not doing my job. He would give me a rant about doing my duties unless customers needed my help. And they almost always did, but he wouldn't listen. I come to find out the reason V isn't behind the counter is because her and Mr. Bossman are having meetings in that meatpacking office with the door closed. He's packing some meat back there. Oh, yeah. He's packing some meats.
Not my husband or wife, not my problem. We continue this dance of me covering her station and getting in trouble for it for a few weeks until an ice storm hits. I tell my boss I can't move my car out and I'm waiting on a ride, so I might be a little late. He proceeded to fire me on the spot because this is the last straw.
What?
Yeah, by the way, I hadn't had any write-ups. I agree that it's fine because I hate this job anyway. Fast forward 2 years. I'm 21 and I'm celebrating with my friends at basically the only local bar in this terrible, tiny crap hole town. And then we walk in and who do I see? Why, if it isn't Mr. Boss and not V, but his wife. He looks at me and tries to act like it's a happy coincidence. I sit down, tell him it's my 21st. He buys me a beer as a gift and I chat him up. Enter my revenge.
Ooh.
I introduce myself to his wife and tell her how he treated me, talking about how I would cover the deli counter almost every shift for half an hour and then get in trouble for it because it wasn't my job. No matter how many times I tried, I kept telling Mr. Bossman I wouldn't have to cover deli if he and V weren't having their daily locked door meeting in his office.
Whoa.
She looked at him, looked at me, and couldn't say a word. It could be read as pretty crappy, but his wife was super polite and friendly and not in that crappy Southern religious style, but a genuinely nice person. I'm glad I could help her pull the wool to let her know her husband is complete garbage person.
Wow.
Yep. That's some revenge, baby.
Whew, I love how it was like he had no plans on taking any revenge.
And then 2 years later.
And 2 years later, he just dropped, like, he gives you a beard and you're like, thanks. So your husband was cheating on you. Cheers.
I love that. He kept that in his pocket for a while, just waiting. But you know what you should never keep in your pocket and wait for?
Oh my goodness. Subscribing to OKOP.
Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify and TikTok. And if you want to be a real one, support us on Patreon.
Oh, yes. Join Muhammad, Amanda, Will Combs, Connor Van Buren, Desiree Canterbury, Keegan Simmons, and Kathy Mother Effin Quigley.
See you soon.